Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto Joined the Teen Ants, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. That no good for nothing ninjutsu flipping piece of crud. Gizmo shouted. He was inside his H.I.V.E. dormitory and he was currently wearing a hole in the floor due to his frequent pacing. Gizmo's latest disturbance was due to a certain new ninja on the block known as Shadow. Ever since the small genius had laid eyes on Blackfire, he had found her majestic, graceful, and beautiful. But now that Shadow was here, things had suddenly gone wrong. Blackfire barely acknowledged his presence these days, and when she did, it was usually to give him a kick through the nearest wall. Damn, she was strong. But Shadow was stealing her away from him. Gizmo had always been good at knowing people. After all, he was a genius. And in his life so far he had learned one vital thing. Everyone hides something. He was going to find out what it was that Shadow was hiding. Then he would present it to Blackfire, she would no longer like him and then he could be with her till the end of time, he thought so anyway. Slowly a plan began to form in Gizmo's young mind. This plan was accentuated with a large grin. Meditation was as it always was in the hall. Disturbed. Naruto had gotten back from his test mission a few hours ago. His body was bruised and battered but he had ignored the pain and bowed down before Slade. It made him feel almost sick to his stomach to have to bow to such an evil man, but he had to do it. He had handed Slade the eagle's eye and was rewarded with nothing more than a displeased look. But it seemed he had passed the test. An hour later Ivy had arrived and explained her whole part in the test. Slade had found her to be of some skill and had recruited her even though she had failed. Naruto found himself quite suspicious of this, but then again, maybe Slade was just short on minions. The area around him was thick with noise. Laughing and planning of evil deeds filled Naruto's ears to splitting point until a single voice see through them. Hi, Blackfire said. Naruto didn't reply. I was impressed by the way you handled your mission. I never liked that brat, Rose, apparently you almost K her. To do that to a child, you must have a lot of courage. She said with an obvious grin. Naruto spoke. It does not take courage to take a life, it takes cowardice. It is not brave to attack a child, it is also cowardice. To give life is the greatest power. But to whom you give life is your own responsibility. Be it a monster to do your bidding, or a child to carry on your legacy. I look with disdain upon those who no one that deserves death should have it, and those that deal it should not be so quick to judge. If you truly wish to take an act of vengeance and justification upon an individual, you do not grant them the luxury and gift of death. Instead, he turned around and looked Blackfire in the eyes. You make them wish for it. Blackfire was a little horrified. That was dark, a little, too, even for her. You make them wish they were S. Why? She asked lightly. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Because then the fun truly begins. Blackfire could not see Shadow's mouth, but she got the distinct impression there was an evil grin behind that veil of black cloth. Blackfire thought this would be an ideal time for a subject change. Say, do you wanna get some coffee? She asked. Naruto looked at her with narrowed eyes. Coffee contains caffeine, which is an artificial stimulant for the body. Were I to drink some, it would interrupt my daily flow of chakra. He said simply. Blackfire scowled at him. Geez, I was only asking if you wanted something to drink. No need to get all serious on me. Come on, don't you ever relax. Take a break, party even. She was up in his face, almost nose nose with a determined look in her eyes. Naruto looked at her pointedly. No, he said blandly. Ark, Blackfire growled. You're impossible. What will it take for you to just relax some? You know, get some R&R. What the hell is wrong with you? Are you a robot or something? Are you anything other than serious all the time? She screamed at him. Naruto stared at her with the same vacant expression. He appeared to think for a moment. Then he said, no. Blackfire screamed. Her head went red with the bee rush and her ears had smoke puffing from them. She stormed off. I want to party. Gizmo piped up. I already said no, you little pipsqueak. She grabbed Gizmo and drop-kicked him into a wall on the other side of the hall. Naruto was still sat meditating and trying to ignore everything. What he couldn't help was letting out a little sigh of relief that, thankfully, no one heard. Jinx watched the commotion from a distance and couldn't help but giggle. She didn't know why she liked the white-haired boy, but she did. She felt like she had seen him from somewhere before. Dudes, what are we going to do? Beast Boy yelled. Naruto's out there and we can't guide him anywhere. Heck, he could even be. Beast Boy couldn't bear to say it. He symbolized the word by raking his finger along his N. For all we know. Beast Boy, calm down. Robin told him. We're gonna get him out of this. But right now, if we go bargain in, we'll blow his cover. And we can't let that happen. We have to trust him, for all our sakes. Gizmo picked himself off of the floor and brushed himself down. He looked up and narrowed his eyes at Shadow. He watched Shadow sigh. Wait. Warning bells sounded off in his head. He sighed. He sighed. Ninjas don't sigh. Gizmo almost went into a rage. But he quickly composed himself because he was currently receiving some disturbing looks from the others around him. Then again, why was he acting this way? It was only a sigh after all. But something about Shadow just didn't add up. Where did he come from? Where did he learn his moves? And why did he turn up when that other ninja guy did with the teen ants? And even more than that, why hadn't the teen ants interrupted any of his missions? The other missions conducted by the other members had mostly been thwarted by the gang of dweebs. But Shadow's missions remained untouched. Well, Gizmo would just have to conduct an experiment. If Shadow got away with this next mission coming up without meeting the ants and having to face them, well, Gizmo would simply have to proceed with a few inquiries with Slade. Naruto had been picked to retrieve a device from the local science installation in the south end of Jump City. Your task, Shadow, is to find me the positron regulator and destroy anyone that gets in your way. Plus, as an addition, I want you to destroy the labs. Naruto's eyes almost widened. Will there be any individuals inside? Naruto asked him. Hundreds. Won't that be fun for you? Naruto only just managed to conceal his gulp. How was he going to do this? You start immediately and I want you back within the hour. Now, go. Naruto leapt to his feet and ran silently down the hall and out into the corridor. He exited the H.I.V.E. headquarters and began his way to the science installations. He knew what they were. He had been shown a picture and given a drawing of a map to memorize. What he didn't know was what the hell a positron regulator was. He needed to somehow complete the task without endangering any of the people inside. But he had to make it look proper. Because he was sure that he was being tailed. Naruto reached over to his left arm once he was within sight of the science installations. He pressed a little tiny button that Cyborg had told him about if he was in any danger. He had to get them here, but he had to somehow give them a message to not call him by name and to attack him. After all, if he was being tailed, then it really wouldn't go down well if the ants allowed him to walk right in front of them and for them not to attack. Naruto made it to the base of a large wall that surrounded the installation. He easily jumped over it and proceeded through the grounds. It had been about 10 minutes since he had pressed the button and still no sign of the ants. Naruto carefully concealed himself in the dark and rolled back a single little flap in the armor and looked at the cybernetics underneath. Before they had glowed a slight blue, now they didn't glow at all and were a little gray. Naruto didn't know what this meant, but he was sure it wasn't good. Suddenly a little squeaking sound reached his ears. He looked down and saw a little green rat by his feet. Beast Boy. Naruto pulled out a slip of paper and wrote on it his situation. He handed it to the rat inconspicuously and watched it scamper away. He had asked the ants to attack him and hold nothing back. He hoped they would trust him. Naruto skimmed across the way to a spot below a large window. He ran up the wall and gripped the ledge. He brought out a shuriken and began scrying into the large glass. Soon Naruto was inside the window. The lights were off and the room was dark. He looked around the place he was in, computers littered around the area. There were desks and a few pieces of paper that neither looked important nor interesting. Naruto tried the door. It was open. He opened the door a fraction and peered out. A pair of men in white coats were just approaching. Luckily neither of them were looking at the door. They were far too busy talking. It can harvest is amazing, said one of them. I mean, think about it. This device generates a positron burst that absorbs the negative energies of matter itself. It has unlimited energy manipulation potential. The one that spoke was a red-headed English man. His accent was posh, like his posture. He wore a blue tie that could be seen hanging from his end from underneath his white coat. I understand that, but as much as I find this enthralling, I must protest to the government's views. Consider this: what device was ever made that could harness awesome power, that did not become used for the government's own ends in war? The one that had spoke that time was a bald young thin man that seemed very weak and weedy in comparison to his red-haired counterpart. I understand your fear, I feel it too. But think of the proceeds derived from this. We could be rich, said the red-haired one. But what good is money in a world of few places to purchase? Such a device would be catastrophic. Can we even measure 1/10 of its storage capacity? It's amazing it was ever created in the first place. How was it created anyway? Asked the bald one. By accident, the red-haired one said. Thomas Fulton was looking for a way to use the particles in the atmospheres to power electrical devices. Instead, he created an object which absorbs and contains the energy. Fulton did this. The other looked bemused. That's our excuse for a scientist created the most powerful device in the world. Apparently so, said the red-headed one, chuckling. So where's the device being held? The bald one asked. Down the corridor in the clean room. I just checked on it a few moments ago. Naruto was already there. He wants us to attack him, Raven said hoarsely. That's what the note says, Robin said, holding the simple piece of paper. But why? She asked. I don't know, Robin answered. But he wouldn't ask us to do this if he didn't have a good reason. We have to do this, and I don't think we should hold back. What do you mean? Beast Boy asked, eyeing Robin with curiosity. I mean that when we attack, we should do it for real, Robin said. Are you crazy? Beast Boy exclaimed. Naruto can handle it. Don't worry. As long as we don't seriously hurt him, he'll be fine, Robin said while checking his motion tracker. It isn't him I'm worried about. Dude, what about us? He kicked your butt, remember? Beast Boy began. He didn't kick my butt, Robin exclaimed angrily at Beast Boy. Beast Boy grinned back at him. Not nice when it happens to you, is it? The green boy asked. Naruto had the device. It had been poorly defended, probably because no one was supposed to know it existed. He had to get through a few laser security grids and a touch-sensitive floor, but it was easy stuff to deal with. Naruto looked at the object he held. It looked like a metallic egg. It was shiny silver, oval and relatively heavy. Naruto carried it under his arm. As he made his way across the grounds again, the alarm in the building sounded out loudly into the night. Strangely enough, though, there was no shouting or commotion from inside the building he had just exited. Naruto had hoped that this was a good sign. He had also written on the note for the ants to evacuate everyone from the building. Naruto had set some charges around the supports in the basement of the building. Slade had given him the explosives and he had been shown how to activate them and what would happen when they went off. He hoped that no one would be in the building once they did. Naruto pulled out a small little remote control with a large red button on it. He looked behind him at the building and hoped beyond all hope that the structure was empty, and if it wasn't, well, he tried not to think about it. Naruto pushed the button. The area was suddenly silent, as though all sound had been drowned out by another noise that Naruto could not hear. Then the noise came back, and Naruto's ears were filled with the roar of flames, his eyes with the amber glow of the scorching embers, his face lit with the luminance of the blaze. Heat swept over his face, but it was only enough to warm his F. Something was wrong. Naruto sensed something behind him. The teenage ninja dodged out of the way as the ground where he had been standing was hit with a green blast. Naruto tumbled to the floor but was back on his feet in an instant. The teen ants stood before him, defiant and golden in the blaze that set aglow upon their bee. Ah, Naruto began in a dark voice. The teen ants. I have heard of you, but somehow I expected more. And you are? Robin asked. Naruto looked at the ants with a deathly glare. His features were obscured in darkness due to the fire behind him, but it only heightened his image of menace. Shadow, Naruto said, crossing his fingers as he gathered his chakra. Remember the name, for you shall be begging me to finish you before the end. You're outnumbered, Beast Boy said with narrowed eyes. Suddenly, multiple clones of Naruto flew from either side of Naruto's body and surrounded the ants in a circle. All of the copies looked exactly alike. There were at least 20 of them. You were saying, they all said. Beast Boy gulped. We'll just be going now. Beast Boy said, backing off until his back rested against Cyborg's cold metal. While all the clones looked alike, there was a single difference that allowed the ants to identify the original. Only the original was holding the device stolen from the burning building that blazed in the background. That Naruto placed the device into a bag and strapped it to his back. "Ants go!" Robin shouted. They all jumped in. Beast Boy turned into a Tyrannosaurus Rex and roared loudly into the night. Starfire flew in and began pummeling the Narutos with starbolts. Robin threw some explosive discs and furiously struck out at the Narutos with his staff. Cyborg punched out at the Narutos and blasted them with his sonic blaster. Raven was more hesitant though, and so were the Narutos that attacked her. Their kicks and punches were ill-placed and held barely any strength or force. Raven herself merely attacked them with tentacles of blackness or solid objects that she threw at them. Robin swung his staff and watched as the Naruto he hit disappeared in a puff of smoke. He swung around and barely managed to avoid a kick to his back. He countered by sweeping the Naruto's legs and S down on the clone with the staff, causing it to vanish. Suddenly a sharp pain S its way over Robin's back and something sharp C into his F from AS. He swung around, whacked the Naruto around the head, only to be kicked in the back by another one. There seemed to be more Narutos than he thought. That or the original was creating more by the moment. Was there any limit? Swarms of white-haired youths flew at Cyborg from every angle. He blasted and blasted but soon found himself overwhelmed. The Narutos began to pile themselves on top of him, forcing his bulk to the ground. Starfire flew at a Naruto clone and kicked it across the face, causing it to disappear in a small white puff. Another clone kicked her in the back while another appeared in front of her and gave her a powerful U to the face. She was thrust down to the ground and piled on. Naruto swarmed over Beast Boy and slowly managed to bring his giant beast form down. It took about 15 Narutos to keep him held down until the green boy turned back to normal from exhaustion. Raven was grappled by some clones and brought to her knees. She could have beat him off if she wanted, but she found she hadn't the will. The original Naruto watched the scene without moving an inch. With 5 minutes, the ants had been overpowered and forced to the ground where they currently struggled against the Bunchen clones. Naruto shook his head, seemingly at the pitiful efforts. "This is what the H.I.V.E. is afraid of?" Naruto asked. "Disappointing." He sighed. "Well," Naruto began again. "At least I can use you as test subjects for a new jutsu I've been working on." The original said with the hint of a smile. Though what his features expressed, no one could know due to the darkness. Naruto made a few hand signs. He kept his eyes closed at first, but then he opened his eyes suddenly and called out into the night, "Kage Kaiten Bunchen no Jutsu." Literally, shadow fire clone technique. The clones exploded. The area was engulfed in a powerful blaze as the clones exploded whilst they gripped tight of the ants. The flame lasted for barely a moment and it took maybe a scale of 30 seconds for the dust to settle. In the clearing the ants looked unharmed. But they were certainly unconscious. Naruto surveyed the scene for a moment before he slowly walked away. As Naruto walked along the streets he grew to be aware of something. He slowly turned around and looked directly into a dark alleyway across the road. Jinx lurked in the shadows. She had been watching the young ninja ever since he had set out after the device. She had watched the fight between Shadow and the teen ants and she couldn't help but feel suspicious. It had seemed too easy. It had seemed as though the ants had actually tried to hurt Shadow, but it also seemed that they had held back. She lurked in an alleyway and watched the white-haired youth walk calmly down the deserted streets. Suddenly he stopped. Jinx leaned forward to get a better look. Shadow turned around and looked into the alleyway that Jinx skulked in. Jinx darted back into the shadows around a corner and waited for her heart to stop its incessant fast-paced beating. She slowly regained her breath and hoped that she had not been seen. She looked around the corner. Shadow was gone. Softly there was a cold blade's edge placed against her tea. She took an instinctive breath inwards and backed away from the knife's edge. Her back rested quickly against another's C and the blade was pressed a little more forcefully against her T. Why are you following me? Shadow asked. Were you asked to? No, she answered quickly. Then why? He asked her, his voice was threatening and deep. Because I wanted to see you in action. You were amazing, please, don't kill me, I surrender. Naruto let her go. What kind of bad guy are you meant to be? Jinx asked him while she brushed herself down. What do you mean? Shadow asked. Well, you never really do anything bad unless you're told to, you give yourself a rule and code or something along those lines to follow, and now you just let me go because I asked you to. Why did you let me go? I might have attacked you, she asked. Are you trustworthy? Do you lie often? Shadow asked her darkly. Of course not, the truth is always so much more fun. She said. Then why should I not believe you when you say you surrender? She was stumped. Ninjutsu Rule 23, never attack a surrendered opponent. Jinx blinked in shock and recognition at what he said. Naruto jumped into the air and seemed to vanish into the blackness of the night. When Naruto had returned from his mission, he hadn't really been expecting any form of praise. He didn't want any, and he didn't receive any. When he had delivered the device, Slade had looked upon him with little more than a glare. It was strange to Naruto how the man could convey emotion through a single visible eye, and it got Naruto thinking about what had happened to the other one. When Slade looked at him, it was always with contempt. He looked at everyone the same way, as if he harbored some great detestation of them regardless of who they were. But strangely, Naruto had noticed something. There was a single person that changed the emotion in Slade's eye. Robin. Whenever Robin's name was spoken, the rage within Slade's eye would falter for a mere moment. Much too fast for the average person to notice, but Naruto wasn't the average person. Naruto was thinking of this as he lay in his dormitory bed within the H.I.V.E. Suddenly his train of thought was rudely interrupted by a rapping at his door. Come in, he said in a gruff tone. The door gently slid back and Blackfire entered the room. He didn't look at her, he didn't need to. She always wore the same overpowering perfume that almost threatened to clog up his nose with each intake of breath. Blackfire sat down on the bed. She didn't say a word. Slowly but surely she bent her head down to kiss him. He stopped her. He placed a hand on her shoulder and looked at her in the eyes with a confused expression. What are you doing? He said with venom. Blackfire was lost for words. Naruto looked at her curiously, as though she was some form of specimen to be studied. I said you could come into my room. Not sit on my bed and kiss me. What makes you think I'm interested in you? He asked her. Because it's me, she said with a cheeky grin. Naruto almost laughed. Because it's you, he said with a slight chuckle. Suddenly he stopped laughing and looked at her in a cold way. You really do think highly of yourself, don't you? He asked. Blackfire was shocked. You think you're beautiful. You think you're amazing. You think you're irresistible and the queen of the country. I hate to burst your bubble but. He pushed against her and she backed off into the middle of the room. He looked up at her and narrowed his eyes. You're not, he concluded. Please leave, he said simply before turning over on the bed and gazing at the wall. Blackfire stormed out. Naruto was left alone for only a few moments before another intruder came calling. But this one was not physical. It was H.I.V.E looking for conversation. Why didn't you go for it, Kit? The fox asked. Naruto let out a sigh. Because of Raven. Naruto answered. What about her? H.I.V.E asked in a suggestive tone. Naruto was getting a little angry. I don't cheat on those I care about. He growled aloud. Cheating. What makes you think it's cheating? The fox chuckled. You're not even with Raven. You can't cheat on someone you're not with. Just shut it, furball. Besides, even if that does allow me to go with other girls, what makes you think I want to? Naruto asked in a savage tone of voice. H.I.V.E chuckled. Because if I wasn't supplying you with a negative flow chakra to alter your personality a little, you'd be blushing like a tomato right now. Naruto couldn't speak another word. It was a while before he found his voice. She tried to kiss me, I think I'm ended to blush. You weren't embarrassed because of what she was doing, Kit. You were embarrassed because of how close you two were. That to me says, you like her. Naruto heard an array of cackling laughter ring out in his head. Look, just shut the hell up. What do you know anyway? You're just a dumb furball with an ugly face and snout. What makes you such an expert? Naruto called out loudly. Naruto almost leapt out of his skin when a knock came from the door. Shadow, said the voice from the other side. Can I come in? Oh, sure. The door opened to reveal the pink and gray features of Jinx. She looked embarrassed about something. Who are you talking to? She asked, looking around the room. Oh, no one. He stuttered. He quickly checked himself when he found that he was talking as he normally would. Is there any particular reason that you're here? Naruto asked in the gruff tone he used in the H.I.V.E. She walked over and sat down on his bed. Yeah, I wanted to say sorry about following you yesterday. No, you didn't. Naruto interrupted. Jinx looked at him wide-eyed in shock. I shall ask again. Why are you here? Naruto's eyes were narrowed and his voice held a threatening visage. Jinx's face looked suddenly torn with sorrow. Without any warning, she burst into tears and held her head in her hands. Naruto noticed that her tears were tinted blue. Strange. Naruto sat up. Every fiber of his being wanted to console the girl. But he knew it would be out of character. He tried to force himself to ignore her cries, but he could almost feel her pain as his own. Naruto couldn't help it. In one moment all the negative energies that Kyuubi had been delivering into him were swept away with compassion. She placed his arms around her and let her head sink into his shoulder as she wept her sorrow. It seemed like they were rocking backwards and forwards for an eternity. Naruto was stroking her hair and she gripped one of his biceps hard. It slightly hurt, even through the armor, but he didn't mind. After a while, Jinx finally stopped sobbing. She lay on his sea, still rocking backwards and forwards. It seemed she had used up all of her strength. Naruto looked down at her compassionately. He suddenly remembered he should be in character and gracefully backed off. He let her go and once again, laid himself down on the bed. To his shock and embarrassment, she never left his sea and soon she was laying down with him. A slight little chuckle made itself heard at the back of Naruto's mind. Don't say a word, Naruto warned the fox. He once again looked at Jinx and couldn't help but feel the need to aid her. Are you okay? He said in a monotone, gruff voice. Jinx didn't say a thing. Naruto raised his head a little and looked at her face. She was asleep. Just great, he thought. Naruto got the distinct impression of delightful humming from the back of his mind. Kyuubi was mocking him. Naruto lay there for at least several more minutes before he felt his eyelids grow heavy. He was asleep soon after. The bright glare of the overhead light stung Naruto's eyes when he opened them. He couldn't quite remember what had happened before he went to sleep, but his memory was soon jogged by the apparent weight on his sea where Jinx lay. She was still in a deep slumber and Naruto hadn't the heart to wake her, even if the position was a little embarrassing. Slowly he felt a stir. Jinx began to groan a little as she began to waken. He gently lifted her up and held her as she opened her eyes. Are you okay? He asked her. Yeah, I think so, she said in that light tone of hers while she rubbed the sleep from her eyes. So, do you want to talk now? Naruto asked. Jinx shuffled her feet a bit. She was currently sitting in Naruto's lap. It was not a confident position. A terrible blush rose through her as she looked over her shoulder at his face. That deep blue eye stared back at her. She wished she could see the rest of his face. She wanted to kill him. But she had the distinct impression that, were she to try, he would not let her. She gently slid off of his lap and down beside him on the bed. She avoided his gaze and stared at the ground. Why did you cry? Naruto asked. Jinx still didn't answer. Naruto found himself a little annoyed. I have asked you 3 questions. Only one of which you have answered. I have comforted you, you have even slept here. I think I am entitled to an explanation. Don't you? Naruto said a little darkly. Jinx looked hesitant. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't ask for an apology. You don't need to give one. What you do need to give is an explanation. I guess that the reason you broke down was the same reason you came here for. So at least answer me this, why did you come to me? Because I trust you. Jinx answered simply. Then you're a fool, Naruto said. Am I? Do you lie? She said. Naruto found this a tad annoying that she would ask him the same question he had asked her only the night before. No, he said sternly. Then why am I a fool to trust you? She said. I don't like being mocked. Naruto growled. Jinx gazed her feet as they swung off the edge of the bed. I'm not trying to mock you, I don't even know what I want. She said sadly. Naruto thought she was going to cry again, but she didn't, instead she began a story. It was hard growing up. She began. My parents were normal. Did you know that? She said looking at Naruto who listened politely. Normal. She scoffed, I hate that word. What does it mean anyway? The word, normal, is supposed to mean the general way that things are, but everything is different. She yelled. She swung her hand and a lamp next to the bed shattered. Everyone is different, so to be different must be normal, yet they call me a freak. She swung her hand again and the bedside table that had hosted the lamp was in half. Naruto didn't even blink at these outrages. He just watched them and listened. Jinx looked incredibly sad. My mother hated me, she said in a croaky voice. My father beat me. My brothers did too. All because I was different, because I was a freak, because I was nothing but bad luck. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. That's my power, you know. She said looking at him. Bad luck. Everywhere I went things went wrong. I eventually learned to control it, mostly. Is that why you joined the H.I.V.E? Naruto asked softly. Jinx nodded in answer. After all, what else could I have done? She exclaimed. Bad luck? How can any good come from bad luck? I kinda had no choice but to be one of the bad guys. There's always a choice, Naruto said. Jinx gave him a sharp look. What is wrong with you? She asked. You talk like one of those good minis guys. Maybe I just have different views and agendas than the others. Naruto shrugged. Jinx looked at him quizzically. Her calm exterior didn't last long as her previous pain returned. Her face became scrunched up in anguish and depression. Do you know what it's been like for me? She asked, not really expecting an answer. I've been beaten, abused, attacked by my own family and shunned by everyone I ever knew and loved because of the way I was born. Yes, Naruto said darkly. What? Jinx asked confused. Yes, I do know what it's like. You're not the only one with a dark past. I shall not reveal mine, but shall I say that it involves a lot of pain and suffering. He paused before he spoke again. And death, he concluded darkly. Jinx looked at him pleadingly. Is there any place in the world for people like us? Where else can we go where we'll be accepted? I found a home here, it's the only one that's ever been kind to me. I'd leave if I could. She added the last part quietly. Why do you want to leave? Naruto asked. She turned on him angrily. You think I'm proud of what I do? You think I enjoy it? Oh, the others do. Yes, they think I'm all the evil little one that revels in the pain of other. I'm not. I hate it, she said in a hoarse whisper. I hate being what I am. I hate doing what I do. I don't want to be a criminal. I don't want to always be fighting on a side I don't even agree with. I can never be myself. I don't want the others to think things of me, so I put on a face every morning. I pretend to like it all and even give suggestions on what to do next, but every day I feel like throwing up, like crying my heart out over and over again. If you're so afraid of what others will think of you, then why are you telling me? Naruto asked. Jinx froze. I don't know. She said simply. She looked at him with sorrowful eyes. I guess that I just see something in you that I can trust. It's like you're like me, though different. She gazed at him for a long period. Will you tell the others? She asked. No, said Naruto honestly. Thank you so much, she said. She buried her head in his shoulder again and clutched at the fabric of his clothing. Without warning, she lifted her head, pulling back Naruto's veil, that covering most his face, away and pressed her lips firmly against his. Naruto was shocked. He tried to pull away but found he had no will to. He didn't want this, not Jinx anyway, but for some reason, his body refused to let him pull off. Before Naruto could help it, he was responding by pressing against her lips. Her mouth was sweet and her lips gentle. It was nice, more than nice. The K lasted a whole of 30 seconds, but Naruto thought it had been minutes. They separated and found themselves gasping for breath due to the fact that neither of them had remembered to breathe during the incident. Naruto backed off a little up the bed and looked at Jinx with a wide-eyed expression. Jinx sat a little away, she seemed a little shocked and flustered. She looked at Naruto and couldn't help but blush. Naruto was shocked at the occurrence, and was even more shocked at his urges. It seemed his hormones were spiraling. He didn't want to believe that his first K, not including the incredibly embarrassing and disturbing moment involving him and Sasuke, would have been with Jinx. I mean, he liked her, but he didn't want to really be with her. He wanted to be with Raven. But strangely, his body urged him to K Jinx again. Before Naruto could stop himself, he had grabbed Jinx and K her. It was as though he had lost all control of his body, and he suspected a certain furball had something to do with it. Both Jinx and Naruto slowly laid themselves down. There they continued to K and hold each other close until they fell asleep in each other's arms. What? Gizmo shouted, flailing his short arms in the air. The rumors of Shadow and Jinx had spread around the entire complex like wildfire. The two star-crossed individuals were still asleep in Shadow's dormitory, but one of the H.I.V.E. members, known as Earshot Power of Super Hearing, had heard what was going on. He had also heard the conversation. Gizmo was currently pacing backwards and forwards after hearing the news. He was shocked. He had wanted Shadow to get with someone because then maybe Blackfire would lose interest and be his butt, Jinx. And to hear about Jinx's past and what she thought of everything, it was, well, a large grin spread across Gizmo's face. It was juicy. A sinister plan formed its way into Gizmo's mind and he couldn't help but chuckle at the genius. Jinx woke up in a daze. Memories of her and Naruto swam through her mind like the drifting of dreams. But it was no dream. She slowly looked up and her eyes met Shadow's, or what she thought were Shadow's. What she saw shocked her. It was Naruto Uzumaki, that ninja that had been with the ants. It was him. He looked a little different. His features were exactly the same, but his hair was white. It must have been dyed. Jinx looked at him with a shocked and fearful expression. Naruto out of Shadow slowly began to wake up. He held his head as he felt a little dizzy. Soon the grogginess wore off and he looked up to see Jinx looking at him as though he was some kind of monster. He knew why. He was so stupid. How could he have got himself into this mess? At least it hadn't gone any further than K. That seriously would have messed everything up. At least this he might be able to salvage. Jinx made to run, but Naruto grabbed her arm and forced her onto the bed and held her mouth shut. Please don't, he pleaded. It seemed that all of Kyuubi's negative energy had been from his body. Jinx bit Naruto's palm and he was forced to let go. Ouch. What was that for? He exclaimed whilst holding his hand. Jinx flipped up and her feet connected with Naruto's chin, knocking him into the door. She landed on the bed ready to fight. What are you doing here? She asked menacingly. Naruto rubbed his chin and looked her over. You tell me that you hate being the bad guy, and when you find out I'm the good guy, you attack me. A little bit of a contradiction there. Jinx's face softened a little. I want you to go. She said quietly. When we leave this room, I want you to leave the H.I.V.E. and go back to the ants or wherever you came from. I won't tell the others who you were, but only if you go. Jinx looked away from him as if unable to look into his eyes. Naruto nodded. Okay, I can do that, he said, scratching the back of his head. The others aren't going to be happy though. I was supposed to bring this place down. Jinx chuckled a little. Bring it down? What do you think you could do? I mean, you're good, don't get me wrong, but Slade himself is here. A small shiver ran up Naruto's spine. You think that just because you took out his robot duplicate that the real thing would be easy? He's before. And he came back with awesome power. Then it was taken away from him and he was locked away. Now he's escaped, and running the show again. You can't beat him. The Ans never truly managed. No one ever really could. What could you do? I could K him, Naruto said with narrowed eyes. How? A throwing star in the back. Think about it realistically here. He's been punched, kicked, thrown into a pit of molten lava and still lives to tell the tale. That is, if he was the storytelling type. But still, how are you going to K him? As I said, I want you gone. She made towards Naruto, but he knew she was heading for the door. You might wanna put your mask up, she asked him. Oh, yeah. Naruto fumbled with the cloth and repositioned it over most of his face. Together they slowly walked out of the room. Suddenly Jinx was grabbed from overhead, the individuals jumped down and other members of H.I.V.E. grabbed her arms and legs. Mammoth appeared out of nowhere and butted Naruto. Naruto went flying back in his room and into the side of the bed. Slade appeared at the door. He glared at Naruto and then looked at Jinx. He lifted Jinx's chin so that she was looking into his eye. You should have been more careful, girl. I hate disloyalty, he said darkly. But I haven't been disloyal, she exclaimed, still struggling to free herself. Ah, but you will be. After all, you hate it here. Jinx got the impression he was smiling underneath that mask of his. Slade turned around and saw Naruto just getting up. He was wobbly and still in an obvious daze. As for you, I conclude that scene as she decided to confide in you, that puts you at conspiracy. I also hate conspiracy. Naruto charged, but the door was slid shut before he could reach it. His fist struck hard metal and a blinding pain shot through his hand. Youch! He exclaimed as his hand turned red and seemed to throb. Slade looked hard at Jinx but said nothing. He turned around and gestured for another individual to come closer. This girl was dressed in a flowing multicolored robe. She had white hair and dark blue eyes that were like a cat's. Curse, I want you to place a protection on this door. I do not want him getting out, Slade ordered. The girl identified as Curse walked up and stood in front of Shadow's dormitory. She closed her eyes, raised her hands straight into the air, crossed them and began to mutter some inaudible words. She shot her hands down, uncrossing them on the way. There was a flash of light from the door and everyone knew it was impenetrable. How long will it last? Slade asked. She looked at her handiwork thoughtfully. It'll be indestructible for about half an hour. Is that enough time? She asked. Plenty, Slade said darkly. Naruto brought out the ceremonial tishma. He looked the door up and down and thought he'd make easy work of it. He charged forward, jumped, and Naruto was sent backwards into the far wall with a thud and a flash of blue light. What in the world was that? He said, rubbing his head back into life. I can see something covering the door. It's like some kind of field. I've never seen anything like it, Kit. Kyuubi commented in his head. Now you tell me, Naruto said aloud whilst rolling his eyes. Well, a field, EY. Let's see how strong it is. Naruto put the tishma back into its sheath on his back. He rapidly gathered his chakra. He opened his right hand and quickly a spiraling ball of energy began to form. Once the Rasengan was completely charged, he ran at the door and thrust the ball into the metal. There was a bright flash of light and Naruto found himself back into the wall behind him. That's gonna be sore, he groaned. A thought came to Naruto's mind. I have an idea, Naruto said, more to himself than Kyuubi. Naruto crossed his fingers and created 4 other clones. They all gathered their chakra into equally powerful Rasengans. In unison, they shouted, Rasengan. They all thrust the spiraling spheres at the door. There was a bright light, but the clones held on. The balls were squashed against the surface of the metal. They slowly began to merge into each other until the Narutos, originals and clones, were all holding a single giant Rasengan against the door. Pain shot through all of their arms. The first clone's arm began to be and he quickly disappeared in a puff of white fluffy smoke. The second soon followed him. One by one the clones became injured by the force of the giant Rasengan. With each one that disappeared, the Rasengan became more difficult to hold. Soon only Naruto himself was holding it in place. The Rasengan exploded with force. Naruto was thrust backwards and hit the back wall so hard he caused a crack in the plaster and hexagonal scales fell off to reveal solid dirt and rock. Naruto felt like his arm was on fire. His back had shooting pains running throughout it and his shoulder had seen better days. His wrist was covered in scratches and bruises. His body felt weathered and tired. He had never used so much chakra before. And he certainly had never tried to control something of that power in his life. But then again, at least now he knew what happens if 2 Rasengans meet. They make a bigger one. Random thoughts of new moves popped themselves into Naruto's head. Sasuke will be surprised when I next face him. This thought made him smile a little. You might as well not bother, said a voice at the now open door. Naruto picked himself up and looked at Ivy. She was standing there with her hands on her hips looking at him evilly. What have you done to the door? Naruto asked darkly. Me. I've done nothing. This is Curse's work. She's Slade's new pet, you might say. She said this with a little contempt. Naruto ran as fast as he could for the door. Ivy didn't flinch as he struck the barrier. He flew back into the room. What the hell? He exclaimed. The spell was put on the doorway, not the actual door itself. You can't go out, not without one of our assistants anyway. She smiled evilly. Naruto felt a churning in his stomach. What kind of assistance would it take for you to get me out of here? He asked, feeling sickly. She said, appearing to think. Well, if you came, he'll let you out. She said this in a very seductively. Naruto's jaw dropped to the ground with a thud. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.